Good morning. Welcome to Unity on Demand, brought to you courtesy of the COVID-19 virus. We are all sheltering in place and sharing our Unity message online. Thank you for joining us. This is Sunday, May 3rd, and this is the second week in our series, Embracing Uncertainty, certainly reflective of our times. Today we're talking about increasing our odds for happiness. Well, fear of uncertainty, isn't that really something pretty common with all of us during this time? Because nobody has the answers, nobody knows. We are living in probably the most uncertain times of all of humanity. An author, H.P. Lovecraft, wrote, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." And that's exactly where we are right now. We have that option of being very fearful because we absolutely live in the unknown at this moment. Well, to deal with this, last week I left you with a couple of exercises. One of them was to live from an attitude of wonder, wondering what is going to happen, wondering what the next step is, as opposed to having this very descriptive answer to something, because we know that none of the answers really mean anything right now. They're just theories. And that when we do catch ourselves starting to think in a certain way that this is absolute, this is an absolute, this is the way it's going to be, simply add the word maybe. Maybe that will happen and maybe it won't. Maybe it will be a good thing if it happens, and maybe it'll be a bad thing if it happens. But allowing ourselves that maybe takes us from this very narrow way of thinking to a much broader scope of life. I have that little Fitbit logo up there with the number of steps for the day, and I was thinking, too bad there wasn't kind of a counter to think how many times we think really limiting thoughts and how many times we think thoughts of wonder or thoughts that allow that greater expression of God in our lives. That would be a great thing to come up with. So I read a blog, Shane Parrish, and he talks about how we approach improving our life. And we really have a kind of attitude that we improve our life by adding to it, adding the new car, adding a new house, adding a new relationship, adding a new outfit to our closet. We have this attitude of adding on. But in this time of sheltering, in this time where things are very different, suppose we looked at the other side of it. How could we improve our life by subtracting? By taking things away from our life, by letting go, for example, a toxic relationship, or letting go of clothes that we aren't wearing, things that are just cluttering our house. How could we improve our life by letting go of those things, those thoughts that we hold in us that are really limiting to us? We have a lot of different kind of time on our hands right now, and this is really a wonderful time to invite ourselves into these kind of questions. How can we improve our life by letting things go, subtracting, if you will? Henry W. Longfellow said, "The best thing one can do when it's raining is to let it rain." And you kind of take that for the pandemic. The best thing to do during a pandemic is to recognize that there is a pandemic going on in our world. And that means that our expectations for the way things are, way our life should be lived, certainly are without merit right now. It's just not going to happen that way. But we have this attachment to it. We have a real attachment to our outcome. And so what happens to us is we start worrying. And worrying is like pre-worrying, because it's not really happening right now, but we just kind of worry what's going to happen down the road. And, it's like, we sometimes plan, we might have a picnic planned and we worry about the weather. We have different things planned and worry something interrupts them. But those things that interrupt them, these kind of acts of God, and not that it's God doing the pandemic, but these incredible acts, we sometimes feel like we could somehow change them, somehow stop them. It's an impossible situation. And yet we get so frustrated because we're so attached to our outcome, our expectations, that when we bump up against something that's impossible to change, what do? Oh, we try harder, right? Just try harder. It's make it happen. I'll make it happen. Because we all have a little bit of that control freak within us. We have a little bit of the know-it-all, because we're so attached to this outcome. So we feel we know what's best, and we're going to do everything we can to make it happen. Well, there certainly is a cost to having these kind of expectations and this attachment to the outcome. First thing it does is take away our peace of mind. It's so frustrating when life and the world doesn't look like we expect it to look. And we can be so attached to those expectations, we don't even notice the beauty that's around us because we're worried. We're spending a lot of time, a lot of energy into that pre-worry uh, and just attachment to this story, this illusion that we have created for ourselves and for our life. When we do affirmations as a prayer, we find that it's really much more powerful to do the affirmation around what it is we want to feel as opposed to the specific physical thing. So say, for example, we want to affirm that we want a red sports car. It's never about the sports car. It's about that feeling of freedom. It's about that feeling of the wind in our hair, or whatever that might mean to us. And so too in this time of uncertainty, when we start doing our affirmations and our prayers, it's not that this should end by such and such a date, or this should happen, or that should happen, but rather we want the feeling of freedom. We want the feeling of connection and giving up our attachment to how that healing of this might look. When we are so tied in to our expectations, what we're doing is actually putting blinders on possibilities. We limit everything that is possible to just what we can see by this narrow description of how life should be that we have created for ourselves. You know, in truth, life is so huge. Why would we limit ourselves to this narrow pathway? And when we do limit ourselves to this pathway, what happens is we begin to feel insecure. We don't have the answers. How can we make things right the way they're supposed to be? It's really then that creates a fear within us. And knowing that we don't know how it's supposed to be, we just know that we have a great desire to live life, to love and connect. And right now we're being invited to find new ways to do that. And of course, one of the biggest costs of having these huge attachments to expectations is that it really influences our emotions. We begin to feel regular disappointment. We could feel very rigid in the way that we do things. You can be impatient. We want this over. We've invested 5-6 weeks. We become obsessed with what's going on because we are so attached to this prescribed outcome. So I want to give you some damage control that you could use as we're going through this. And the first one, of course, is going to be non-attachment to the outcome. Buddhism has a beautiful way of putting it. They talk about dukkha, the suffering in life, and they remind us that the suffering is not about life. The suffering is the attachment to life, the attachment to the outcome, the attachment to the expectations. So that we know by letting go of expectations, by putting ourselves in the flow, as Eric Butterworth would talk about, being in that flow of life, we all of a sudden give ourselves permission to relax into the moment, to take a deep, easy breath and just be. Because it's going to be okay. It's really that path of the peaceful mind, being mindful to be in this moment right now. This is the holy instant. To not worry about what might happen tomorrow or what might even happen in the next 5 minutes, but simply to be present into that holy present. The second help for damage control is a term that I learned this week. I really like it. It's called unset. And now I know there are times that I have set my heart on something. I so wanted it. I've set my heart on this vacation. I've set my heart on, fill in the blank. But during this time, there's a great invitation to unset our heart. Wherever we invested our heart energy, let us let go of it. Let us expand it. Barry Stevens, who's a therapist, she wrote this great book called Burst Out Laughing. And she said, when I have unset my heart upon something, I breathe more deeply, feel more free. And she says, narrow escape, narrow escape. So when we can unset our heart, what happens is there's more room in our heart for more love, for more compassion, for more movement, so we can dance upon that ever-moving carpet beneath our feet. There's another expression that might help you with letting go of expectations, and that is to wear the world like a loose garment. I got a loose garment on today. When I say loose garment, it reminds me of a TV show on Netflix called Grace and Frankie. And Frankie is played by Lily Tomlin, and she always wears these kind of loose Kafgani type dresses. And when she walks, it just moves with her. And she's always doing unusual things, as Lily Tomlin does, and it moves with her. When we wear the world in that same kind of way, it allows us to go with the flow and to be the flow. We create that flow. There's nothing constricting us, like an expectation constricts us. But if we wear the world like a flowing garment with no expectations, we are able to adapt and to adjust. And not only that, but to grow through it. Instead of being strangled by the circumstances and situations, we're able to grow through it in ways that we might not have even contemplated were the situation differently. And then finally, this quote from Tom Crum that says, instead of seeing the rug pulled out from under us, we can learn to dance on a shifting carpet. We are standing on a shifting carpet right now. And the only thing we can do is learn how to dance, how to move with it. That yes, things will change and we'll make the changes with them because we are resilient. We are vibrant. We are pliable. We are also a work in progress. It's not that God made the world and said it is finished. This is the way it is. Our humanist likes to say that this is the way it is. This is the way it should be. But in truth, we are getting to feel life in its fullest of expression. It's wonderful that at springtime we really get to see life making all these changes. But know that our life too on this great planet is going through a similar kind of change. So right now, let's just take a moment and just go through these damage control steps that we can take for ourselves to make life feel a little kinder. It always is kind. Feel a little more compassionate, even though it always is compassionate. I relax my consciousness. I unset my heart. I wear the world as a loose garment, and I learn to dance with grace on a shifting carpet. I learn to dance with grace on a shifting garment. The primary cause of any time that we really feel that we're suffering is that we always get to choose our response to whatever happens in our world. When something unusual, unexpected happens, we can feel that we are a victim, or we can feel that we are off on a new adventure because we don't know what's going to happen. It's always about our expectation of how it's supposed to be. It's never really about the problem. So to give you an example of this, say I got to the airport, and once I got there, my ride had gone, I've got my baggage checked in, and then I find out the flight has been delayed for 3 hours. 3 hours, that's a huge chunk of time. Now, when I hear that, I have a choice. I can say, if only I had known, I could have stayed at home, I could have gotten this done, I could have done that, and feel like a real victim. I'm just trapped here in the airport. I have no way to get back home to spend the 3 hours doing something I would rather be doing. Or I can say, wow, I've just been given a gift of 3 hours. I have nothing I'm supposed to be doing during this time. So I am totally free to do whatever I want to do. I can look out the window. I can read a book. I can wander into the stores. I can make a phone call. There's all these things that I'm free to do because I was given this gift and I'm willing to look at it as an adventure. Another way to look at it, maybe you apply for a job and you don't get it. You thought this was a perfect job and you didn't get it. And you can either be that victim that, once again, I didn't get the job, or your adventure might be to learn from it. You might call the interviewer and ask what you could have done differently, or where your weak points were that you could strengthen them for the next time. You could learn it, use it as a learning adventure. Or maybe another one some of us have dealt with, and that's marriage. Some of us have had marriages that ended. And you know, the day of the marriage, we stand there and do our vows, and we vow to love each other forever. And forever ends at some point. And we go, how could this be? Was, so disappointment, such a failure. And when we do that, we see that disappointment, though it's sad when a relationship ends, we can sometimes then lose the beautiful things that did happen during that relationship, and understand that when those vows were made, they were meant by both parties. They were heartfelt vows that were made, but things change. And so we can bless that adventure and take from it, or we become the victim and stay stuck in it. So here's a little visual thing if you're a visual learner to help you release those expectations of how things are supposed to be. And you may notice my little yoga frog over here has a pair of scissors sitting here. Scissors, cutting the cords to expectations. When you find that you're really having this resistance or difficulty in certain areas, just close your eyes for a moment and see if there's some kind of a cord. What is the attachment? What is the expectation that you had? That is, what is your heart been set on that is not happening? And then just visually think of yourself as cutting the cord, just cutting the cord. And the great thing about this, you have these around the house anyway. If you stick them out in different places, you might just see them and remind you to say, wow, okay, if I'm feeling discomfort here, what is it that I'm uncomfortable about? What could I let go of? What causing the upset? And let me just cut that cord. It kind of reminds me of Jesus' parable talking about the lilies of the field. They don't work, yet they're beautiful. They don't worry. And he really puts out that challenge. Have any of you added even one iota to your life by worry? And to this day, no one has been able to say that they added anything to their life by worry. All they have done was given that suffering, that dukkha of life, because they have this attachment to it and they're not willing to give it up. Worry gives us nothing. They say, worry is interest paid on problems that have even yet to develop. So let's bring you to my second exercise for this week. Worry tomorrow. Yes, because worry, we get numbed when we worry. We could be planning the greatest vacation in the world, but if we start worrying about all the things that could go wrong, it just takes all the joy out of it. It just sucks it dry. I had a friend who was getting ready to sell her house, and she was certainly worried that it wouldn't sell, but then she realized she was equally worried that it did sell, and she didn't know where she would live. See, we can create all kinds of things to worry about. But I'm going to ask you this week to consider being a worry procrastinator. Every morning, you can just say, I'm not going to worry about anything today. I'll worry about it tomorrow. Every day this week, when you get up, just say, I'm not going to worry about anything today. I will worry about it tomorrow. Yeah. And then you do what you're going to do, because whether you're attached to the outcome or not, you'd still do the same thing. You do your planning. And it's funny, there's this paradox of life that when we finally let go, that's when we're finally in control. When we let go of those expectations, we let go of those have to be's, that's when the control comes back into our life, because we give ourselves permission to live from our inside out as opposed to living from circumstances inward. So I won't worry about anything today. I'll worry about it tomorrow. So let's just finish today's message with those affirmations again. I relax my consciousness. Yes. I unset my heart. I wear the world as a loose garment. And I learn to dance with grace on the constantly shifting garment. I learn to dance with grace on the constantly shifting garment. Thank you. Thank you. Now is the time that we celebrate our prosperity. I'm going to see if I can find my slide for this. Let's see. Okay. As we go through this, and I did have to say to you, I want to thank you so much for all of the support that you have been giving this ministry. We have had a wonderful April. We made up our deficit from March, and it's all because people like you have agreed to support this ministry. And, our prosperity is certainly a thing of prayer, just as so many other things that we pray about. It's about being in that flow of spirit. It's about being in that consciousness of knowing that God is one with us, that God is our supply, and that there are many channels, and we begin to open ourselves up to those many channels. So thank you, everyone who supports Unity Spiritual Center of Lansing. And I know it's not just with your finances. I know there's incredible prayer work being done, not only for this Unity community, but for everyone in this world, and it's important. We are a tithing ministry, and this quarter our tithes are going to Haven House. That's our congregant's choice, and they support families that are going through a tough time in their life, to support them until they get on their own feet again. So I'd like to invite you to turn within with me as we do our prosperity blessing together, just really being appreciative of the goodness that comes into our life. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I praise, give thanks, and am glad. Yes, amen. I'd like to finish today's service with a song by Daniel Nahmod, Love is My Decision. That is something we can set our heart on, making a decision to love. Feel free to sing along. Thank you for joining us for today's service. I hope you had fun singing along with Daniel. God bless. And be sure to join us for part 3, our meditation. Peace be with you.